What's going on, everyone? It's time to talk about some of the most important free-to-play tips out there to help you progress inside of Capybara Go. We're going to break this down into a few topics that can really help you out, especially with some of the new systems in the game, with double S being added, as well as the overall development cycle of Capybara Go. This has kind of guided some of the tips that I want to provide you all today. And let's dive into our first one. So our first tip has to do with these boxes right here. Now, I'm in just the anniversary event because that's the one that's going on right now, but this applies to basically every single event that comes around because almost every single one of them has an S rank weapon selection box and an S rank gear selection box. Now, really, with the S rank weapon, that should be your priority. Getting to a mythic weapon if you're early on, and just making sure that that's your number one priority is going to be the goal. However, the main bottleneck is oftentimes the fodder, the extra gear that you need to get all the pieces to get a mythic weapon. And so the S rank weapon selection box, while it is important to get some of them in order to have the right amount of S rank weapons when the time comes when you do have enough fodder, the S rank gear selection box is arguably more important. This is definitely not something that I had initially expected, but it really makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because with the S rank weapon, you've got just the weapons you can acquire in order to have the fodder to push your weapon to mythic. But when you're also pulling your keys, your legendary keys, and all this other stuff, you also will be getting armor pieces, rings, accessories, etc. And this S rank gear box applies for armors, rings, and accessories. So this one box applies to 5 slots of your gear, even if you don't consider the duplicates, because the fodder is still going to be needing to acquired for those duplicates. That is 3 different slots that you need S rank gear boxes, whereas you only need 1 slot for S rank weapons. So actually prioritizing the gear selection boxes is something that you might want to think about, because that is going to be the bottleneck when you've completed your mythic weapon. It's not going to be the fodder anymore. It's going to be the S rank duplicates, if you don't already take a proactive action to pick up these S rank gear selection boxes. The next thing we're going to talk about is inheritance books. Now, if you've watched any content on this game, inheritance books, or any progression guide at least, is like one of the things that everyone talks about. And to be honest, it's something that I've talked about quite a bit myself, but I didn't realize how important they are, even though I'm one that prioritizes a good amount. If you notice here, I'm completely out. I am literally out of ghost books, and I still have yet to go ahead and reach the tier 6 ghost inheritance, which is where you get the big upgrade. As soon as I hit tier 6, I can kind of slow down a little bit because all these other remaining upgrades aren't nearly as important. This one is, but the rest of them aren't, besides the middle tier. And so I can focus on upgrading other inheritances and using those other books. But I'm going to run out of those as well, because I've been dumping all of my eggs, all of my inheritance book selections that I've gotten into the ghost. So I'm going to run out of those as well. So every single opportunity you get, you should be getting these inheritance books and elite packs 100%. And it's difficult to prioritize everything in every single event, but the inheritance books are far more important than initially realized, especially if you're on an inheritance that's quicker than the ghost. Now, most every build is going to be running the ghost, but if you're loading the skeleton, for example, you're going to get through this tree much faster because it takes a fraction of the time to upgrade each of these nodes than it does for the ghost, which is really awesome, but also really fast to run out of inheritance books. So every single time you can pick them up, every single time you can buy them from the black market for gold, some of the other resources like guild currency, that's even something to kind of consider using them on the books as well, because it's going to be a huge bottleneck, and tier 6 is so massive for your account that you 100% want to reach there. This next tip is something that I really truly just, for some reason, could not wrap my head around, because I am so used to playing a lot of mobile games that really, when you upgrade something, it's final. You got to go down that path, or if you swap, you've lost those resources, or maybe it's just an inefficient use of your resources. This game is oftentimes the complete opposite. You should not hold onto many resources at all. The one exception might be gems for certain events rolling around, but everything else, just toss it in, upgrade, don't worry about it. There are swap talismans to change out the Arcana and gear that you're upgrading. There are ways to just completely revert. I mean, take, for example, this armor piece. Or actually, let's even go further. Let's take this example for double S equipment, right? If I wanted to, I can revert the equipment level down, reverting all of my levels that I put into it. I can downgrade it, reverting basically all of my equipment upgrades that I put into it. I can revert it, reverting all of the upgrades I put to get the gem slots. I can even do a casting rollback, which it doesn't show it here, but that would revert my double S ring to a single S ring, returning 100% of the resources in every single one of those cases. So oftentimes, the best way to spend your resources is immediately. When you find out something else to do, you just refund it and do that instead. Now, there are a few exceptions to this, of course, like if you were to open up a S-Rank box and you choose a gear piece that isn't necessarily relevant for you. Yeah, you can't unopen the box and choose a different one. But for a lot of the upgrades that you're doing on your account, you can revert it. Even, for example, and this is something that I've been utilizing lately, I was running a Mythic Crybaby for a while because I had some extra ghost books. But as I needed more ghost books, I just reverted it, right? So I got the little bit of extra bonus in stats to progress a couple of extra stages, reverted it, and now obviously I have an epic one because I'm using those books to progress the inheritance. So there are so many different stages of this that you can definitely upgrade basically everything and not be worried about it in most cases. The exception is kind of the build path that you're following. Now, these last two tips kind of tag on to the previous one, and this one is talking about regular Arcana. Now, one of the best upgrades in the game are these treasure collections, the Arcanas that you can unlock. And so one of the things in the early game before a lot of these updates happened was to just pick up the Arcana for whatever weapon that you're utilizing. But since they've released double S equipment, the previous single S Arcana have basically become worthless. For example, the Whisperer here or the Bloody Grail, as soon as these pieces of gear are turned into double S equipment, I'm going to need to swap those Arcanas for double S Arcanas. And yes, I can do that. But it's going to take me some time to get swap talismans, and I could have been using those on different other pieces of gear that I might have preferred instead of this. And so one of the big things to kind of notice is just because a lot of the regular Arcana in the game are so easy to bypass, like you can so easily get to double S equipment at this point, ignore all of this. The pets are the exception because we don't have double S pets or anything like that Arcana, but for the gear and weapons, 100% just ignore the regular single S Arcana. And again, when I refer to double S, it's because it's affecting the double S equipment, and you can see that here. The single S Arcana down here are what I consider the regular Arcana, and you can see that denoted by the weapons in the screen. And arguably the most important free-to-play tip, with a caveat, is don't swap builds. Okay, I mentioned how you can pretty much revert anything in the game, and you can kind of make sure that you're not really having to sidetrack with swap talismans, with ignoring the regular Arcana and some other things like that. But one of the things that's really hard to swap over in this game is your overall build path. Now, for me, and there's a caveat to this, and this is the caveat, I wanted to have a change of pace. I was using the Whisperer for a very long time, and I wanted to play with Sky Splitter, and I wanted to see if it was going to progress my account, and it did a little bit more because of the double S changes. But there are two things with swapping builds. One, like I said, it is very difficult. Now, the Sky Splitter to Whisperer, Whisperer to Sky Splitter has minor changes, so it wasn't too big of a setback. But if you're swapping strategies, you may need to get a full new set of gear. You may need to get a full new set of brands and heroes, which take a long time to collect and oftentimes boxes of themselves. And that can set you back a lot more. But also, and arguably the more important thing, which I referred to at the beginning of the video, is the development cycle of Capybara Go. One of the things that I am not typically used to is developers pumping out content very, very quickly and also updating relatively quickly in regards to things that might be broken, underpowered, or etc. And they do that. They release either new pieces of gear to fix those problems or update something to fix something that maybe be bugged or whatever it is. And that causes every single, some of the main weapons at least, viability in the game. If you're going with Whisperer, Sky Splitter, Reaper Staff, all of those are going to be viable. Even if you're going with a counterattack weapon, they're probably going to release something that makes it a very, very strong build. It's oftentimes going to really set you back to swap builds than it is just to stay with it, especially if you're running one of the main three, right? And that's usually what the build guides recommend. It's Sky Splitter, Whisperer, or Reaper Staff. Or if you're starting with a beginner build like the Blade of Justice into another weapon because it's on the banner that you want to run, just don't swap. Unless, and like I said, this is the caveat, you're hoping for a change of pace. Because at the end of the day, all these tips don't matter if you're not having fun. because the whole point is to have some fun. So if you want to swap builds because you want to have some fun, great. Just don't expect to be able to progress nearly as fast as you otherwise would have if you just stuck with one single build. I don't necessarily mean like one weapon, although that is part of your build. I mean an overall build that fits the strategies you're going for. Like if you have a skill-based build using Judgment Ring, Bloody Grail, and brands that affect that, you're going to want to follow a build that does that. So for me, I could technically swap between Sky Splitter and Whisper relatively easily. Although if I do that enough, it will start to set me back. And there are some brands that are way more important for some builds than others. Especially with double S brands coming into the game, it gets even more tricky to get the ones that I specifically want. So just something to keep in mind there. But that's going to wrap up some tips that I've got for you. There's a ton more, and I'm sure that we'll do more videos in the future to give you guys all sorts of extra tips. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one.